Hello, my dear students. So myself Rajabandi, MSc PhD, Assistant Professor from Department of Chemistry, Erode Sengundan Engineering College, Erode. So today we see the topic ecosystem. So we know the concept of ecology and ecosystems. So the living organisms, whether the plant or animal or human beings or anything, are surrounded by only the environment. So they derived their needs from for their survival. That is ecology. So the living component where interact with non-living components for their basic requirements form different ecosystems. So that is ecology, system, ecosystem. For the definition of ecology, which means the study of interactions between the organisms and a group of organisms with their environment, that is called ecology. So the environment consists of both biotic components and abiotic components, that is called the ecosystems. Then the ecosystem definitions may the ecosystem is the basic functional unit of ecology. The term ecosystem is coined from a Greek word meaning study of home. So the definition: a group of organisms interact among themselves and with environment is known as ecosystem. So thus an ecosystem is a community of different species interacting with one another and with their non-living organisms exchange their energy and matter, that is ecosystem. Then examples of ecosystem. So the animals cannot synthesize their food directly, so it depends the plants for directly they consume their foods. And biome, so which means small ecosystem. It a small ecosystem, which means a kind of organisms which can live in a particular ecosystem depends on their physical and metabolic adaptations to the environment of that places. So that is small ecosystems. So the biome is a small ecosystem within ecosystems. So in these ecosystems which are exposed to same climatic conditions and having dominant species with a similar life cycle, a climatic adaptations and physical structures. So these all the are included in this ecosystem, that is called biome. So these are the structure of type of ecosystem. So the ecosystem, the natural, artificial, man-made engineering ecosystems only. Then natural ecosystem were derived into two types. One is terrestrial and aquatic. And then the aquatic ecosystem were derived into two types. First one is an marine aquatic system, and another one is freshwater aquatic system. So in this freshwater aquatic system, we are divided into two types. In this lotic, it means which means running water ecosystem and standing water ecosystem. In this running water ecosystem means river and spring streams. These are the example of running water, and the standing water like lake, pond, and pools. These are the standing waters examples. In this natural ecosystem, the natural ecosystem operates themselves under natural conditions. Based on the habitat types, it can be further classified into three types. So first one is terrestrial. So we can see elaborately what is terrestrial ecosystem. In this ecosystem is related to land and types of vegetations. So that is terrestrial ecosystems. For example, a grassland ecosystem, forest ecosystem, desert ecosystem, etc. So aquatic ecosystem, in this ecosystem is related to water, and it is further subclassified into two types based on the salt content. So first one is freshwater ecosystem. So it classified into two types. The first classified ecosystem is running water. In earlier manner, we can see the examples river and streams. And second one is standing water ecosystem. So that is pond and lakes. And second, marine ecosystems may yeah, examples of seas and sea sources. Then the man-made artificial ecosystems. So it was maintained by only man. So croplands, gardens. So these are the man-made artificial ecosystems. Then structural and components of ecosystem. So in this term, structures refers to various components. So the structure of an ecosystem explains the relationship between the abiotic and biotic components. So in this, biotic means living organisms and abiotic means non-living organisms. So these are the components of an ecosystem and the relationship structure. So abiotic components, the non-living components of ecosystem collectively form a community called abiotic components or abiotic community. It includes the climates, soil, water, air, energy, and nutrient materials. Then physical components, it includes the energy, climate, raw materials, and living space that the biological community needs. So it is useful for the growth and maintenance of its member. So that is physical components. So in this physical components, example of air, water, soils, and sunlights are included in these physical components. And then chemical components. So it is a sources of essential nutrient materials. So in this chemical components for like organic substances, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and fat materials. So these are the organic substances, and inorganic substances of the heavy metal ions like uh, heavy metal ions, aluminum, copper, zinc, copper, and some of other macro elements. So these are the few elements are inorganic substances. Then biotic components. In this, biotic components are called as living organisms. So in this living members in an ecosystem collectively form its community called as biotic components or biotic community. The living components are made of many different species. These species are distinguished on the basis of their nutritional relationship it includes are these biotic components. The autotrophic components, the members of autotrophic components are producers. So, which are autotrophs, they derive energy from sunlight and make organic compounds from inorganic substances. For example, green lands, green plant materials, algae, bacteria. So, these are the autotrophic components. So these are the producers. Then heterotrophic components. The members of heterotrophic components are consumers and decomposers, which are heterotrophs. It only depends on the others for their food. Then they consume autotrophs like producers. They heterotrophs are macro consumers and micro consumers. So these are the herbivorous, omnivorous, and carnivorous. These are they called as macro consumers and micro consumers. These are the decomposers, bacteria, fungi, or etc. That is saprotrophs are micro consumers. So members of biotic components of an ecosystem and its classifications. So the biotic components of an ecosystem are grouped into three groups. First one is producers, and second one is consumers, and third one is decomposers. So first producers are maybe a plant. Consumers are the animals with the human beings, and decomposers of the called as microorganisms that like fungi, so that kind of living organisms. Then first one is producers, that is autotrophs. In this, producers synthesis their food themselves through the photosynthesis. For all the green plants were produce their food from sunlight, that is photosynthesis. For examples, plants, trees, so these kind of living organisms. Photosynthesis. The green pigments may called as chlorophyll. So the present in the leaves of plants converts carbon dioxide and produce and water in the presence of sunlight it into carbohydrates to produce the carbohydrates. So the reaction of photosynthesis process may show in this slide. So you can note that consumers heterotrophs. The consumers are organisms which cannot prepare their own food and depend directly or indirectly on the producers. That is consumers. The human beings are also included in these consumers. So they cannot make organic components but can transform one form of organic compounds into another form of organic compounds. That is called consumers. For example, plant eating species. So rabbit, how, goat, deer. So insects. These are the examples of plant eating species. And animal eating species, fish, lions, tiger. So these are the examples of animal eating species. Then types of consumers. First one is primary consumer. Second one is secondary consumer, and third one is tertiary consumers. The first consumers are may called as plant eaters or herbivorous. So these primary consumers take only their food for plant eaters. They called us plant eaters, plant only. So they called us plant eaters. For examples, insect, rat, goat, deer, cow, horse. So these are the examples of primary consumers. Then secondary consumers are the carnivorous. So that meat eaters for consuming the primary consumers. So these are the called as um, secondary consumers. So for example, frog, cat, snakes. For the snakes eat the rat. So this is the good example of ecosystem. Then tertiary consumers. The tertiary consumers are may called as secondary carnivores. Are they? These are the meat eaters. So the tertiary consumers are secondary carnivores. They feed secondary consumers. They can directly depend on the primary carnivores for their food. So this is the good example diagram of ecological system. So we can see the green plant. It is a producer. So the producers, the primary consumers, are directly consume the food from green plant producers. Then the primary consumers, herbivores of the primary consumers, they can secondary consumers as directly consume the primary consumers. So this is the ecosystem. Then third one is decomposers. So the decomposers are those organisms which feed of dead organisms, plant, animal, human beings, or animal, anything. So that dead organisms only are consumed by these decomposers. For example, algae, fungi, bacteria. So during this decomposition, the inorganic nutrient materials are released from the dead bodies. So this inorganic nutrient material with the other organic substances are utilized by producers for the synthesis of their own food. For example, plant, meaning for herbivorous, carnivorous, and omnivorous. So in this herbivorous, animals that eat only plants are called as herbivorous, that is vegetarian material. And carnivorous, the animals that eat other animals are called as carnivorous, that is non-vegetarian. And omnivorous, the omnivorous materials are called as each both of animals and plant materials that can eat, that is vegetarian and non-vegetarian. Functions of an ecosystem. So the understand to understand the function of an ecosystem uh, should be thoroughly can understood in this chapter. And the types of functions of ecosystem. The ecosystem divided into three types. First one is primary function or primary production, secondary function or secondary production, and the third one is tertiary function or tertiary function. So the primary function of all ecosystem are manufactured by only photosynthesis process. Then secondary production of the all the ecosystem were produced from all the primary functions. So the energy were stored by the consumer of the secondary function. And the third tertiary function means all the living systems die at a particular stage. These dead organisms, dead bodies are decomposed to initiate their third function of ecosystem, namely cycling. So that is tertiary function. So functioning of ecosystem, energy and material flow, food chains, food webs, and food pyramids. So in this functioning, energy flow in the ecosystem. So energy is the most essential material for all the living things. The solar energy is only source of our planet Earth. So the solar energy is transformed into chemical energy in photosynthesis process by the plant materials. That is the primary producers. The the sunlight falls on the green plants, only 1% of it is utilized by photosynthesis. Remaining 99% are wastages from the sun. This is the most essential step to provide energy for all other living organisms in the ecosystem. The very tiny amount of chemical energy is used by the plants for their growth, and the remaining is transferred to consumers, so that by the process of eating. So thus energy enters the ecosystem through photosynthesis and passes through the different trophic levels, that is feeding level of the ecosystem. Then energy flow through atmosphere to an ecosystem. Sun is the ultimate source of energy. Its radiations travel through the space in the form of waves and reaches the Earth's atmosphere. So the atmosphere absorbs 50% of the radiations and allow the remaining to reach the Earth's surface. The solar radiations were reached so Earth's surface, some of which is absorbed by organisms to produce organic matter through photosynthesis process. That is the energy flow system and photosynthesis equation. So the carbon dioxide reacted with water molecule in the presence of sunlight. It produces the carbohydrate material and oxygen and water. So the plant materials are used by herbivores, and herbivores are used by carnivores by their food material. So in this energy ecosystem is transformed from one organisms to another organisms. So the conversion of solar energy is governed by law of thermodynamics. So the relationship between the structure and functions of energy flow models. So the from the above, it's clear that biotic components and abiotic components are linked together through the energy flow and nutrient cycling, shown in the figure. So in this figure were shown there energy ecosystems between the biotic and abiotic components, vice versa. So nutrient flow or nutrient cycle. The nutrients, which means uh, divided into two types. First one is macronutrients and another one is micronutrients. So in this nutrient material are essential to all the human beings for survive their life, and animals, plants also. So in this macronutrient materials are elements are needed in large amounts are called as macronutrients. That is oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus. These are the macronutrients. And micronutrients, the elements needed in small amount are called as micronutrients, where it is called boron, cobalt, strontium, zinc, copper. So these are the micronutrients are the mentioned materials. So the nutrient cycles, the cycle flow of nutrients between the biotic and abiotic components is known as nutrient cycle or biogeochemical cycles. The nutrients enter into the producers and move through food chain and ultimately reach the consumers. The bound nutrients of the consumers after death are decomposed and converted into inorganic substances which are readily used by the plants, and again the cycle starts. So the major nutrients like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen are cycled again and again between the biotic and abiotic components of the ecological system. So hydrological cycle. So we know the hydrological cycles, which means the movement of water from one to another places in a cycle manner. So that is hydrological cycle. So nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen is the present of atmosphere as nitrogen 2 N2. in large amounts. For 78% of the nitrogen were present in the atmosphere. So the nitrogen is present in all the biotic compounds in different forms of food. For example, protein, vitamins, amino acids, and some other foods. This is the nitrogen cycle in our plant material having a nitrogen compounds. If the plant don't have a nitrogen content, we can artificially so inserted the nitrogen compounds. For example, nowadays we can research the uh, our scientists research the nitrogen fertilizers materials. So in this nitrogen fertilizers materials may uh, may used to the nitrogen lowering plant materials. So in this nitrogen rich component of the um, fertilizers may increase the nitrogen content in the plant. So it can easily to inserted into the plant material. So, so nitrogen from the atmosphere is taken by the green plants as a raw material for synthesis of different food materials for amino acids, proteins, and used in the metabolism. So these food move through the food chain. After death of the plants and animals, the organic nitrogen in these tissues is decomposed by several microorganisms into the ammonia. The nutrients and nitrates and nitrites, which are again used by these plants. Some bacteria converts nitrates into molecular nitrogen, which is again released back into the atmosphere, and the cycles goes on. So nitrification. So the conversion of ammonia into nitrates is termed as nitrification. This is brought about by nitrifying bacteria. For example, nitrobacteria, nitrosomus. So that is nitrification. So denitrifications, the conversion of nitrates into nitrogen. It is termed as denitrification. This process brought about by denitrifying bacteria. For example, Pseudomonas and fluorescence. So these are the denitrification bacteria. Then oxygen cycle. So the oxygen cycle helps to move oxygen through three main regions. One is atmosphere, then biosphere, then lithosphere. So in this atmosphere is called air, fully filled by air. Biosphere, some of all ecosystems. Lithosphere, Earth's crust. Then ecological succession. So in this ecological community may be replaced by another community or by a series of communities. Thus the progressive replacement of one community by another till the development of stable community in a particular area is called as ecological succession. So there are various stages of ecological successions. First one is pioneer community. The first group of organisms which establish their community in this area is called as pioneer community. So then serial stage. In this various developmental stage of a community is called as series. So it is a group of plants or animals living in an area. Then types of ecological succession. So in this ecologists recognize two types of ecological succession based on the conditions were present at the beginning of the process. Then primary succession. So it involves this primary succession, gradual establishment of biotic communities on lifeless grounds, hydrosphere, xeroids, and thyrospheres. So these are the types of primary successions. In secondary successions, it involves the establishment of biotic communities in an area where some type of biotic community in already were present in the environment. Then process of ecological succession. So process of ecological succession can be explained in the following steps: mutation, invasion, migration, establishment. So these are the process of ecological succession. Then competition, reaction, stabilizations. So these are the factors are included in this ecological succession. Then forest ecosystem. We know the forest ecosystem, which means the forest ecosystems are found in undisturbed areas are receiving moderate to high rainfall. In this forest occupies nearly 40% of the world's land area. So in India, it occupies only 19% of its total land area. So types of ecosystem, forest ecosystem, it tropical rainforest, tropical deciduous forest, tropical scrub forest, temperate rainforest, temperate deciduous forest. Then features of different types of forest. Tropical rainforest may characterize high temperature and broadleaf trees like a teak and sandal on the animals and like a lion, tiger and mangi. So these are the animals were living in the tropical rainforest. Then tropical deciduous forests were characterized by warm climate and it's only during the monsoon time. So, in this deciduous forest, having only the maple, oak, and hickory trees, and the animals like deer, fox, rabbit, and rat. So, these are the animals who are living in the deciduous forest. Then, tropical scrub forest are characterized by dry climate for a longer time. So they have small deciduous trees and scrubs and animals like deer, fox, etc. So temperate rainforest, they are found in the temperate areas with adequate rainfall. They are characterized by coniferous trees like pines, redwood, and animals like squirrels, fox, cats, deer, etc. Then temperate deciduous forest. So the in this area were characterized by moderate temperatures. So it will include the broadleaf deciduous trees like oak, hickory, animals like deer, fox, and bear, etc. Then character of the forest ecosystem. In this character of forest ecosystem, the forests are characterized by warm temperature and adequate rainfall. It makes a generation of number of ponds and lakes, etc. The forest maintains climate and rainfall. The forest supports many wild animals and protect biodiversity. The soil is rich in organic matter and nutrients which support the growth of trees. Since the penetration of light is so poor, the conversion of organic matter into nutrients is very fast. Then structure and function of forest ecosystem. The abiotic components of the are physical components. So the it found in the soil and the temperature. In addition of minerals and the occurrence of litter is characteristic features of majority of forest. The biotic components, it's called as producers. The plants absorbs the sunlight and produce the food through the photosynthesis process. For example, trees, scrubs, ground vegetations, and then consumers. So for example, ant, fly, insects, mice. So these are the consumers. This is the figure of forest ecosystem. Then secondary consumers, they can directly depend on the herbivores for their food. So these are the called as secondary consumers. For example of snake, bat, fox. Then tertiary consumers, animals of the tiger, lion. So they consume the primary carnivorous materials and decomposes. So decomposes they are, consume the dead organisms. For decompose their dead organisms like living beings or animals, plants. So these kind of organic materials. So that is called decomposes. Then grassland ecosystem. So in this grassland occupies about 20% of Earth's surfaces. In addition to grass species, some trees and scrubs are also present in grassland materials. So limited grazing helps to improve the net primary production of the grasslands. So but overgrazing leads to degradation of these grasslands resulting in the desertification. And types of grassland ecosystems. So depending upon the climate conditions, grasslands can be classified. So first one is tropical grasslands, second one is temperate grasslands, and third one is polar grasslands. So characteristic of grassland ecosystem. So grassland ecosystem is a plain land occupied by the grasses. Soil is very rich in nutrients and organic matter since it has tall grass. It is ideal place for grazing animals and it characterized by low and uneven rainfall. And the structure and functions of the grassland ecosystems, that is divided into two types, abiotic and biotic components. So in these abiotic compounds are supplied by carbon dioxide, hydrogen, water molecule, nitrates, phosphates, and sulfates. And biotic compounds they produce the food materials. Then second one is consumer. Consumers are classified into four types. Primary consumers, um, they depend on grasses for their food. And second one is secondary consumers, they feed herbivorous materials. Third one is tertiary consumers, they feed only secondary consumers. Then third one is decomposes. So they decompose dead organic matters. This is the figure of grassland ecosystem. Desert ecosystems. So desert occupies about 35% of our world's land area. So it is characterized by less than 25 centimeter rainfall. So the atmosphere is dry and hence it is poor insulator. So types of desert ecosystem. Based on the climatic conditions, deserts are classified into three types: tropical deserts, temperate desert, and cold deserts. So tropical deserts, so it's found in Africa and Rajasthan. They are characterized only few species. Wind blown sand dunes are very common. Temperate deserts, for example South California, there it is characterized by very hot summer and very cool in winter time. Cold deserts, they are found in Gobi Desert, China, in China. They are characterized by cold winters with warm summers. So characteristic features of forest ecosystem. The desert air is dry and the climatic is hot. The annual rainfall is less than 25 centimeter. The soil is very poor in nutrient and organic matter. Vegetation is very poor. The structure and functions of the desert ecosystem. Abiotic components. The abiotic components are the temperature is very high and the rainfall is very low. The nutrient cycling is also very low. And biotic components, the producers and consumers are included in this topic. In deserts, mostly succulent plants are found in available in these producers. They have water inside them to stay in alive. They have waxy layer on the outside to protect from the sun. Consumers, this is the picture of desert ecosystem. Then these animals dig holes in the ground to live in, and they can come out at night to find food. Most of the animals can extract water from the seeds they eat, then decomposes. Desert has poor vegetation with a very low amount of dead organic matter. They are decomposed by few fungi and bacteria. The aquatic ecosystems, so the aquatic ecosystem deals with water bodies. The major types of organisms found in aquatic environments are determined by the water salinity. The types of aquatic life zone, so freshwater life zone first one is, second one is saltwater life zones. Pond ecosystem, the in this pond ecosystem, characters were three types. A pond is temporary and only seasonal material, seasonal one, and it is a stagnant freshwater body. And ponds can get polluted easily due to the limited amount of the water. Then structure and function of pond ecosystem. First one is abiotic system. So in this abiotic system, the temperature, light, water, organic matter, and inorganic compounds where they are included in these abiotic components. Then biotic components. So first one is producers. They include green photosynthetic organisms. They are classified into two types. So phytoplankton, so these are microscopic aquatic plants, may freely float on the surface of the water. For example, algae, small floating plants like volvax, pandorina, anabina, and cosmorium. Macrophytes. So in this macrophytes are large floating plants and submerged plants like Hydrilla, Jusia, Ulfia, and Demna. So these are the microphytes. Then consumers, primary consumers, zooplanktons, like kind of microscopic animals which freely float on the surface of the water. For protozoa and very other some other microorganisms. The zooplanktons are found in along with the phytoplanktons. They feed on plants only. Then secondary consumers, the insects like water beetles and small fishes. They are the secondary consumers. They feed only zooplanktons. And tertiary consumers, they feed only the smaller fishes. Large fish eat a small fish. Then decomposes. So the decompose the dead plant and animal matter, and their nutrients are released and reused by the green plants. So that is example of decomposes, fungi, bacteria, and flagellates. Then lake ecosystem. So in this lake ecosystem, some important types are in like oligotrophic lake, aerotrophic lake, and dystrophic lakes, organic lakes, meromictic lakes, artificial lakes, and zones of lake. So in these zones of lake, in depending on their depth and the distance from the shore and lake. So first one is littoral zones, limnatic zones, profundal zone, and benthic zones. This is the picture of zones of lake. Then characteristic features of lake ecosystem. Lake is a shallow freshwater body. It is a permanent water body with large water resources. It helps in irrigation and drinking. And the structure and functions of lake ecosystem. The abiotic components like temperature, light, proteins, lipids are the examples of abiotic components. And biotic components, so that is producers. They are green plants, may be submerged, free floating, and amphibious plants. So, for example, of phytoplanktons, algae, and flagellates are the examples of producers. And consumers, so they feed only phytoplanktons, for example, silkids and protozoans. Then secondary consumers, for example, they feed only zooplanktons, insects, small fishes. And tertiary consumers, so large fishes like eat small fishes, they feed only smaller fishes. And decomposes, they decompose the dead plants and animals. River ecosystem. So the running water of a river is usually well oxygenated because it absorbs the oxygen from the air. So the number of animals are low in river streams. So the character of river ecosystem is a freshwater and free flowing water ecosystems. Due to the mixing of water, the dissolved oxygen content is more. The river deposits large amount of nitrates and nutrients. Then structure of functions of a river and ecosystem, the abiotic components. So in these abiotic components of examples of temperature, light, pH, nutrients, organic and inorganic components. So the biotic components, phytoplanktons, algae are the examples of producers. Then consumers, we can see the earlierly all the things are included in this consumers. Primary consumer, secondary consumer, and decomposes. Then saltwater ecosystem. So in the saltwater ecosystem, defined as ozone ecosystem. So in this ozones cover more than two-thirds of the earth surface. The ozone environment is characterized by its high concentration of salts and minerals. So it supplies huge variety of sea products and drugs. So it also provides us iron, magnesium, phosphorus, and natural gases. Zones of ozones. So in this coastal zone and open sea are the two types are in these zones. So coastal sea zone is relatively warm and nutrient rich shallow water. So it is a zone of high primary productivity because of high nutrients and sunlight. And then open sea, it is a deeper part of the ocean. It is vertically divided into three regions. First one is euphotic region, and bathyal region, and abyssal zone. So these three types were divided into in the open sea. So character of ozone ecosystem. So in this ozone ecosystem, it occupies the large surface of area of saline water. Since submarines can sail in ozone, commercial activities may be carried out in this ecosystem. It is rich in biodiversity and it moderates the temperature of the earth. Structure and functions of ozone ecosystem in this abiotic components are already we know that abiotic and biotic components in early manner consumers and decomposes also. Then the field study of simple ecosystems. So in this ecosystem field study were carried out with the group of students in nearby pond, the Melmarottur town nearby Chennai, Tamil Nadu was visited. Some observations are noted in this slide. Abiotic compounds, light, temperature, hydrogen ions, inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and other organic substances like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, or etc. So in these biotic compounds are the producers, consumers were included in these biotic compounds and decomposers also. So grassland ecosystem in Tindivanam village. So in this field, we carried out with a group of students nearby the grasslands of Tindivanam village nearby Chennai. Soil gases present in the atmosphere and water also, that is a biotic compounds. Biotic compounds, these are the producers. The grass varieties, herbs, trees are the producers. These are the consumers, decomposers are also included in this topic. So finally, I thank to my dear students. So given the topic, all the topics are covered by this slide video. So thank you.